turn my camera off.
It says you're live.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this meeting of North Forest's Executive. Firstly, if I could just ask, do we have any apologies for absence, please?
None that I'm aware of, Chair, thank you.
Thank you very much, thank you. Do you wish to take a roll call?
Yes, I can do. So, Councillor Bettison.
Present.
Councillor Dr. Barnard.
Here.
Councillor Birch.
Present.
Councillor Brynner Walker.
I was on mute. Present.
Councillor Harrison.
Present.
Councillor Mrs. Hayes.
Present.
Councillor Hayden.
Present.
And Councillor Turrell.
Present.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Item 2 is declarations of interest. I'd just like to remind members that they're asked to declare any disclosable, pecuniary or affected interests in respect of any matter to be considered at the meeting. Are there any of those interests to disclose at this moment in time? No, then the usual caveat applies, please, colleagues. If any such interest should arise during the course of the meeting, please feel free to interrupt proceedings to declare it. Agenda item 3 is the minutes of the meeting of the Executive held on the 10th of December. You've all had those minutes. Is there a proposer for them?
Move.
Thank Councillor Dale Birch. And a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Gareth. Councillor Dr. Barnard. Thank you. Are we all via assent happy to accept those? Please state now if otherwise. No, we are all in assent on that, so thank you very much. They are duly approved. And item 4, to ask if there are any urgent items of business.
Nope, none that I'm aware of, Chair.
No, thank you, Lizzie, thank you. That then takes us on to the executive key decisions, the first of which begins on page 17 of the agenda papers, is the review of the statement of licensing policy. And that's to be introduced by Sean Murphy from the partnership, I believe.
Thank you, Leader. Yes,
welcome.
Good evening. Yeah, the paper that's before the executive tonight is effectively it's the statement of licensing policy, which has been on a bit of a journey really within the authority. So it started at the licensing committee a few weeks back. It's been out to consultation. It has been through PRG, and basically it is coming to executive night tonight as part of that journey through to full council in due course in January. The statement of licensing policy itself is a legal requirement on the authority. So this is really how the authority implements the 2003 Licensing Act, how it interprets the Act in terms of local policy delivery, some of the practicalities around that. It was last considered by the council 5 years ago, so it is coming up to renewal. It is a 5-year maximum period that basically can be allowed to be in place before it is reconsidered by the council. The policy this year has had some changes made to it. It's been tidied up, I suppose, in some respects. It's been updated to reflect some of the current thinking within the licensing world. And what's before you tonight, as I say, basically represents where it's got to on its journey. It's due to go back to licensing tomorrow, and then in due course, basically onto full council, subject to any amendments that you wish to make tonight or any observations. I have my colleague Julia O'Brien on this call. Julia is the manager for the licensing service, and Julia, I'm sure, will be happy to deal with any questions about the detail of it. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Murphy. Thank you. Colleagues, do we have any questions for the officers? I can't see any questions. Okay, in which thank you very much. We'll move on then to Councillor Harrison to move, please. Councillor Harrison?
Yeah. I would like to move the recommendation that we adopt the policy.
Thank
Me
you. Is
too,
that seconded?
Happy to second.
Thank you
Councillor
very
Brunel.
much. Councillor Mark Brunel Walker. Councillor Harrison.
Thank you. This is very much a refresh the policy. We have to do this. It's very important that we actually have a licensing policy, as we have the responsibility to make sure that all our premises that need licensing are licensed and correctly inspected as required and stay within the terms of the license. It's an important part of our public safety duty. So I commend the policy to the council.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Does the seconder wish to speak now?
I think just briefly, I think the first committee that I joined when I joined Bracknell Forest Council back in 2003 was the licensing committee. I served on it during the summer of hell when the Licensing Act first came in, and we had felt like 300 applications in the space of 3 months. I've seen this policy grow and evolve. I've seen the excellent work from all of the officers that have been put into it. I think this is the best version of a document that already had a very high bar in policies for the local area. I commend it to colleagues, and I pass on my thanks to all of the officers that have worked so hard on this in the timescales that we've got, especially given the backdrop that they might be a tad busy doing other things with COVID. So I fully commend it.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak? I can't see anybody, in which case, Councillor Harrison, would you like to sum up?
Thank you. Yeah, I'd just like to thank all the officers that worked on this and got it up to the state it's in now, that we can just adopt it and not have to think about it for a bit. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Members, can I assume assent unless I see anyone indicate otherwise? No, in which case, thank you very much. That is approved. And thank you very much, Mr. Murphy and Councillor Harrison. And we'll move on to the next item, which is agenda item number 6. And that's the capital programme for 2021-22. To be introduced by Stuart McKellar, our Borough Treasurer. Mr. McKellar.
Thank you very much, Leader. So this is the time of year at which the Council publishes its draft budget proposals for the forthcoming financial year. I'll say a little bit more about the context in which those proposals have been brought together when introducing the next report on the revenue budget. But as always, the budget proposals start with the capital programme. That is funded by a combination of government grants, capital receipts, other external contributions such as Section 106 and borrowing, and that the consequence of it being in this particular order is that any additional borrowing will have an impact which has to be reflected in the revenue budget proposals which follow this item on the agenda. So as in the last few years, the Council has been very mindful of the constraints on its revenue budget, which all local authorities have faced. So therefore, the capital programme proposals which have been put together for the consultation are deliberately modest. They, at this moment in time, will require an additional sum to be met from borrowing, because the total council funding programme is put forward to be £6.8 million, which is above the £3 million which is available from SIL and capital receipts. However, there is in this year an opportunity to recover some of that funding by some of the proposals which will generate additional resources in future years, either from Section 106 contributions which have yet to be received, or from capital receipts, which one of the proposals in particular will unlock. So over the 3 years, the programme is broadly neutral in terms of the amount of additional funding which will have to be taken out by way of borrowing, but it is front loaded, so will require an additional amount of borrowing in the early years, which will then be repaid over the life of this 3-year programme. So there are very few very large schemes in the draft capital budget proposals at this point. The only significant one is to invest in the central depot, where a lot of the council's activities related to grounds maintenance and street cleaning and waste collection are located. It is a site which members will be aware of, and it has been in not a great state of repairs for many years, and it's now at the point where it is felt that a complete refurbishment is needed to keep that facilities going into the future. The proposals will seek to rationalise on site the amount of space used by the contractors and make available some land which at some point in the future will be available potentially for development. That's where the potential capital receipt comes in the future. So other than that, Leader, the proposals are in the report. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. And are there any questions on this for the officers? No? Okay, in which case we'll move straight to, I thank the Borough Treasurer, and move straight on to Councillor Hayden, Councillor Peter Hayden, for the motion, please.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Treasurer. I'd like to move the recommendations on page 59 of our papers, items 2.1 to 2.3. Thank you.
Thank you.
That
is seconded by Councillor Dr. Barnard. Thank you. Councillor Hayden.
Thank you, Leader. I don't want to sort of repeat everything that the Treasurer put very, very succinctly. These are the draft budgets. We've actually chewed them through quite a bit over the last weeks and probably months as well. So I'd like to go straight on to to move the recommendation.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Councillor Dr. Barnard, do you wish to speak?
Nothing to add, Chair.
Thank you very much. Does anybody else have anything to add? No. Oh yes, Councillor Mrs. Hayes.
Yes, sir. Just to say, I'm sure that the officers, who I commend the work they have done with regards to the depot, that the finance and that, I'm sure that at the end of the day, it will come out for the benefit of the local people, and that site is required.
Thank you. Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Leader. I'd just like to say that I think this is a very good budget. It's very good that we can actually invest in our facilities now, even in these straitened times, that we have some very sensible and strategic investments in the infrastructure of our own assets. For example, the investment in the leisure centre roof is going to help make that a lot more energy efficient as a building and help towards meeting our goals of reducing our carbon footprint. And so I commend it to the council.
Thank you very much, Councillor Harrison. Councillor Birch.
Thank you, Chairman. Could I just say, first of all, to anybody listening, that it's not that we don't have any questions. It's a great deal of work has gone into getting the report and the budgets together for over many months by officers and by members, and that elected members have had a great deal of opportunity to examine and to challenge and to work with officers to come up with the very credible, once again, a very reasonable presentation of the this and the later budget. But I just think it's important that those that haven't been or just see a document like this presented and why aren't they asking any questions, can I assure everyone we have really asked questions, we have really drilled down, and this and the whole budget, including the revenue budget cycle, has been subjected this year to an even more rigorous examination than at any time in the time I've been a councillor. And yet again, we come up with a valuable, sensible and properly focused budget that will deal with our capital in a very sensible and, shall I say, affordable way. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Birch. Thank you. That was very helpful. Councillor Hayden, would you like to sum up?
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. First of all, it's very positive that the depot, sometimes facilities do wear out, and the depot has worn out, therefore we have to do something about it. It's been redeveloped with greater efficiencies in mind. So redevelopment will actually help the council's overall efficiency. Also, even though it's been a very, very difficult year this year, we're moving into another difficult year, it's really positive that we can keep investing in our infrastructure. I haven't turned our back on other parts. And I'd like to reiterate some of Councillor Birch's comments, that it's focused, it's affordable. I think the only word that Councillor Birch missed out is our usual one. It's also very prudent. So without anything further, I'd like to put it to the vote, please, Leader.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Hayden. Thank you. Again, could I take assent unless anybody indicates alternatively? And I see no alternative, so that is then approved. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you. And that takes us neatly on to agenda item 7, which is the revenue budget, which once again is to be introduced by the Borough Treasurer, Mr. McKellar.
Thank you, Leader. This again represents the first stage of the consultation around the revenue budget proposals. That's the day-to-day spending on services which we incur. In terms of how we normally approach the development of the budget, we will start with what the current level of spend is, add inflation for pay, prices, contracts, etc. Assess what we believe the level of resources that we'll have, and then look at what the pressures that we are facing every year, and then the balancing figure effectively will be the level of savings which need to be identified to come in within budget each year. Now, this year has presented particular challenges in 2 of those items. Firstly, the level of pressures that we face. Like all local authorities up and down the country, we are facing an absolutely unprecedented level of pressures on our funding due to the impact of COVID. And it is, given the uncertainty around what is happening with COVID on a week-by-week, month-by-month basis, it is pretty much impossible to nail down exactly what those pressures are going to be. So therefore, what we have done in developing this set of budget proposals mirrors what we have done in terms of monitoring the in-year budget, which takes best case and worst case scenarios, and what we will put in the budget proposals in February, the final proposals will be an up-to-date assessment of what those best case and worst case scenarios will be at that point in time, reflecting what we know at that point in time. But there will be a significant level of pressures going into next year. In developing the budget proposals, we hoped that government would recognise that and announce some additional funding for local authorities beyond the current financial year. They've been particularly quick and generous in recognising the impact on our finances this year. It was hoped that they would do so next year, and the Chancellor in his spending around announcement did indicate that was likely to go into next year as well, which is very helpful. What we don't yet have, as in many recent years, is the actual financial allocation for Bracknell Forest Council for next financial year. That will come when the provisional local government finance settlement is announced, which will be, we understand, at some point between now and Christmas. So therefore, yet again, we're having to set the draft budget proposals for the next year without knowing for certainty what our level of resources is, which is a challenge, but it's the same position for every local authority up and down the country. Now, inevitably, we assess that there will be a level of savings that have to be required each year in order to live within the available resources, and that really recognises that there is increasing demand and cost increases in a large number of our services, more particularly social care. Again, that's what is faced by every local authority up and down the country. So the draft budget proposals, as Councillor Hayden and others have already said, represent the culmination of many months of hard work by officers and by members to get to this point in time. These are the draft proposals. They will be reviewed and finalised in February before being decided in terms of the final budget proposals and the council tax level for Bracknell Forest in February next year. In terms of council tax, we are aware, because the Chancellor announced that there will be the opportunity to raise council tax by up to 2% for general measures, and by a further 3% either next year or the year after, or in a combination of the two. So that is flexibility that is available to local authorities. The decision around the council tax levels will be taken in February in the context of all the other budget proposals at that point. So there are some other quite specific points in the report, Leader, which do mention the Treasury Management Strategy, the Capital Strategy. There are also items which the Executive has to give consideration to, and a final one around the council tax base, which determines the level of resources that we will receive through council tax. So that is a helpful 1.6% increase over the tax base in the current financial year, and that does help mean that we can receive a higher level of income even with the same level of council tax going into next year. So that's all by way of introduction. Thank you, Leader, but again, happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. McKellar. Thank you. Do we have any questions for the officers? No, in which case we move on to Councillor Peter Hayden.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to move the recommendations as set out in the papers on page 81 and 82. That's 2.1 through to 2.7. Thank you.
Happy to second.
Thank you. That is seconded by Councillor Dale Birch. Back to you, Councillor Hayden.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm just having difficulty with technology. Right. Again, I don't want to abuse people by repeating everything that the Treasurer has said. First of all, just confirmation that they are still, these are draft and they're still subject to the provisional settlement, which hopefully, well, I understand it's likely to be Tuesday or Wednesday before Christmas, so it gets later and later and later. So until that point, it is still open to change. The pressures continue to be extraordinary. There's the ongoing increased pressures from social care, and it's all been exacerbated by the impact of COVID-19. Fortunately, the government have been pretty supportive and has helped to cover the additional costs, and we anticipate, certainly from Mr. Hancock's announcements, was it last week or the week before, that they will continue to support us directly into next year, which is very, very welcome. And it's, I said, just short, again, it's prudent, and of course it's balanced. We have to produce a balanced budget, but although it's draft, it's something which I personally have a lot of confidence in our ability to deliver it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hayden. Would the seconder like to speak? The seconder would like to reserve. Comments, colleagues? Councillor Dr. Barnard.
Thank you. I'd like to echo the comments of Councillor Hayden. Really interested in any feedback from our residents on the process, but as I hope people will see as they go through, particularly those that relate to areas dealing with and supporting children and people, that again a focus on retaining and doing what we can around early intervention prevention, ensuring that our services are well placed to meet what everyone I think is seeing to be the aftermath or the way out of COVID-19. But I think it really is important in all of these things that we seek those comments, because it is often those who receive some of these services who are best placed to comment on what's proposed, and would encourage, as I said, residents to to let us know what they think as we put together the budget package, and just hope that the financial settlement that we hope to hear will give the certainty to both Councillor Hayden to ensure that we can fulfil the obligations we set out for consultation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dr. Barnard. Next is Councillor Chris Turrell.
Thanks, Leader. Yes, I would like to thank the officers for the work that's been done on the budget in this very tough year in terms of certainty. I think the discussion so far that we've had within the council has been good. I'll be very interested to hear what residents make of it. This is their opportunity to do that. We keep fingers crossed that the government settlement is appropriate, so we can produce a good budget going forward.
Thank you, Councillor Turrell. Thank you. And Councillor Dorothy Hayes.
Thank you, sir. Well, Councillor Barnard said the words intervention and prudence. This is a budget, and I thank the officers for the work they've put in here. Reason being, this has not been a good year. We've had lots of things we've had to deal with, and that alone, the pressure they've been under, and what life brings us day to day, particularly with on my side, when I look at the waste side, cleansing and all the rest of it, I cannot fault with the work they have put into it with me as in my own portfolio. Having said that, I commend that this work is agreed and that the general public, our residents, realise how hard we put something together for them in Bracknell Forest. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Councillor Mrs. Hayes. Councillor Dale Birch, would you care to speak now?
Can I just make a couple of points? Thank you, Chairman. I just want to remind everybody that we've always, it seems to me in all the years I've sat on the executive, we've always had a tough time with money. And you could say that given the exceedingly tough time we're now in, that has stood us in good stead for what we're now facing. But our residents know and have come to enjoy the fact that this Conservative-led administration has balanced the budgets for well over 20 years. And this draft shows yet again that we are delivering and will be delivering the level of services that our residents demand of us and have come to expect. We will, of course, see the effect of COVID, not just this year, but for some time to come. And so our residents will be able to take some comfort in the fact that the experience of this administration in working and delivering value for money services is going to allow us to deliver the right level of services. It will mean us doing things differently. So the only point I would really want to really underscore is with our residents as we go out to consult on this is it may be there, but it may not be us delivering it, the council. We may not be delivering it ourselves. We will be using more technology to support what we're doing and to aid our residents and so on and so forth. So we will be, just as I think they've come to expect during COVID, we will be working smarter to deliver the services that you will see in this draft budget. And I really do look forward to the input from our residents and our partners and fellow organisations because this is a particularly interesting year. And I do believe, though, that this draft budget represents one of the best futures for the residents of Bracknell Forest.
Thank you very much, Councillor Birch. Thank you. Councillor Hayden, would you like to sum up?
Thank you, Leader. Just like to borrow Councillor Birch's words again. I hope he doesn't mind, and I hope he's not copywriting them. His expression was working smarter. I think it does actually epitomise what the financial management and the way the council has operated for some time. What is pleasing, I think most of my colleagues on the executive have commented about resident feedback and the confidence which the residents have and how we support them, particularly the vulnerable people. And Councillor Barnard made a comment about how important early intervention is for us in terms of the levels of support that we offer our residents. The officers, we've all had a very tough year. The officers have had a very tough time, particularly tough, and would like to thank all of them. And that's, Councillor Hayes mentioned the environment and waste, the extra pressure that's been put on her officers and how they've actually really risen to the occasion as always. And it's right across the council. I'm particularly aware, for example, that within the Treasurer's Department, Revenue Services, they've had to farm, manage and make sure that they, as custodians of public money, numerous funding streams, grants, etc., have been properly allocated and paid out. So whichever part of the council you look at, and we haven't even mentioned the care services, it's been a particularly tough time for the officers, and we really do have to go on record to say thank you. We are a Conservative-led authority. It's not just that we have to produce a balanced budget, and at the moment we are still in draft. It's just the same as in the capital budget that we're waiting for the settlement from the government and the results of the consultation. But once again, we're offering a balanced budget. What is important is that it's a balanced budget we have confidence in. There is a little bit of chat amongst other authorities and how pressured they are. We do have our pressures, but we've actually responded with our usual prudent and pragmatic financial management and planning. And then looking forward, the planning is also a strength within our offices here. So again, another thank you. We do continue to do things differently. It's quite nice that the transformation programme is now sort of been indoctrinated into it's the way we do business. So without further ado, I would like to recommend to my colleagues that we support the draft budget. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. And with that, I will assume assent unless anybody indicates either in the chat or by putting their hand up otherwise. I see nobody dissenting, so that is carried unanimously. And I would like to add my thanks to the Borough Treasurer and his excellent team. I see Calvin Orr's on the call, and Arthur Parker normally isn't far away either. It's great, really wonderful job that you have done once again, and we thank you very much indeed for bringing us this far, and we look forward to continuing with you all. And thanks very much indeed, everybody. That takes us on to the last agenda item, which is the agenda item number 8, the Council Plan Overview Report. And that's to be introduced this evening by the Director of Delivery, Mr. Kevin Gibbs. Kevin.
Thank you, Chair. I've been asked by the Chief Exec to introduce the Council Plan Overview Report for Q2. That covers the period from July to September. I think members be aware, obviously, over that period of time, it was between the peaks of the COVID-19. So still quite a pressured time, but it did allow some services to return, albeit that pressure being the significant part of the year for staff and managers. That said, of the 116 actions that we were tracking over that period, 98 of those are reported as green, 17 are reported as amber, and only 1 is reported as red. So quite a lot of substantial good work during that period of time and across those actions. In terms of the performance indicators, of the 35 PIs that we were tracking, 71% of those are green and 10% of those are red. There's been a number that we have taken out due to COVID reasons, and on one sense, quite a number of staff have been double hatting. So it's been good that we've still been able to deliver the majority of our programme. I would only pick out a few items from the Chief Exec's report in terms of highlights, albeit that these are just a summary list. So one around our business continuity arrangement, what we were able to see over certainly the first quarter and the second quarter is that our arrangements have held firm. They've allowed us to deliver our services, and the sense of what the new normal has been around that detailed planning and work. The vast majority of the workforce is working from home, though we do have a fair number of people who are field-based workers, and some of the exec members have spoken about some of our field-based workers in terms of social care and in terms of street services. And we've been able to keep those services going to a level as well. And again, against the backdrop of where we were, that's been a massive success. IT and the provision of IT services has been at the core of our service delivery, and had we not invested earlier in the year, we may have been found things much more difficult. And so the robustness of our IT has been a credit to the service, but the fact that we're still trying different things and experimenting different things, and members will know that we are now both using Team and Zoom for our member communications, but we also have introduced behind the scenes document management systems and working with partners through the local enterprise partnership around how do we get 5G connectivity across the borough. Our public health team have been at the forefront, along with our environmental services team in the public protection partnership, in terms of dealing with the COVID emergency, and they've been doing a fantastic job around delivering not only the public health messages but the public health protection work that both teams have been doing. In terms of adult social care, our sort of hospital discharge process has had to be revised. Government targets around that have been removed, but we've taken an opportunity to improve that process, and the success of those pilots we hope to be able to adopt into the future. Schools reopened on the 1st of June during this period, and obviously had to deal with the return to school. They also had a second peak in work in terms of September with the start of the new school year, and the school leaders have done an amazing job and worked tirelessly to get the help, the education provision back up and running, and in particularly challenging times. And in terms of the administration of grants, and again, we've heard about our finance colleagues and the work that they've done. New work came to us over the year in terms of administrating some COVID relief. And so in terms of the business support grant scheme, this was completed in early August. Around £11 million in payments were made to 882 small businesses. And that's from a standing start and getting that to those businesses so that they were able to be effective. The last one I would point to is the work we've been doing around the dualling of Downshire Way, which not only has improved the traffic flow within the borough, but has dealt with one of our air pollution areas, an important part of our climate change agenda, and a piece of work which has been completed. So a challenging quarter. Certainly with these things, as you look back, it seems easier than actually when you're living through that. Clearly, the fact that performance has remained as strong as it has been is a credit to the staff and to the managers of Bracknell Forest.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gibbs. Thank you. And colleagues, are there any questions for the director? No, I don't see any. So thank you very much indeed for that. And it gives me great pleasure to move the recommendation on page 243, recommendation 2.1 to thank you to note that. Thank you very much, Councillor Birch, for that. And in moving it, I would like to, on behalf of all members of the council, not just the executive, but all members of the council, thank the director. If Mr. Gibbs can please pass on our thanks to the chief executive, and please cascade those thanks right the way through our organisation, because I have often said in the past that that our officers have done a great job, but seldom has it been truer than right now, because I have to say that I am absolutely extremely proud of the workforce at this council at all levels. The fact that they have done wonderful things that we've heard of for COVID, wonderful things in defence of our community from this dreadful disease. And at the same time, they've managed to keep all the day-to-day business of the council running. And so I really would like to express our thanks to them all. Councillor Mrs. Hayes, you would like to speak?
Yes, sir. I'd like to reiterate and concur with what you just said. Something that I think should be brought out: our offices with our partners and our contractors, having put time together when we had no faults with and in my own portfolio, waste and cleansing and the bins and everything. It was because the hard work they all put forward, recognition of working as a partnership, kept us together, and that I would like the residents to realise. It was the partnerships and the understanding of how to be together, and that came out of how they were. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mrs. Hayes. Thank you. Councillor Turrell.
Thanks, Leader. Yes, I mean, we've had the challenge of COVID, and that has led to a significant amount of work, as we all know. Also the work of having to think how to do just so many things very differently. In among that, getting the Downshire Way project completed with more or less on time, and getting that open was a major achievement. It does help our borough in terms of the traffic flow on that road, also helping the surface on there that makes it quieter, so that because of the surface itself and because the traffic flows generally more smoothly. That having been finished, work is now started on the A3095 scheme where we look for similar results. That is a large project, but again, it is moving forward despite COVID. There has also been good work from the planning department in terms of the applications that have been approved and the housing that has come forward and been built, and the many other things that come forward from our planning officers. Applications are nearly all considered within and determined within the statutory times, and that is a good, solid performance, and we should recognise the importance of that in terms of what it all does for the local economy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Turrell. Councillor Dr. Barnard.
Thank you. I think there's been a lot of discussion around, all the great work that Office has done. I just want to also sort of talk a little bit about the work that's been going on in our schools, because if you look at the data and if you look at the key performance indicators that we've got, quite a lot of the good stuff going on is down to the work that they've been doing during very, very difficult and trying times. Just even this past weekend, there was a head teacher who received a call at home on a Sunday lunchtime, indicating that there'd been a positive case of COVID-19 in the school. And during the course of that afternoon and through the evening, and indeed into very late at night, was then actually having to make sure that all children had been contacted to let them know that the school would not be opening the following day. And then, of course, the work started at 7 a.m. the following morning to try and understand what the consequences would be. And that story has been repeated across all our schools. It's also been the case in early years situations and locations as well. And I think our schools have handled it with huge sensitivity in terms of, the way they've gone about working with families like that. So, for them, for all the workers, the contractors, has been said, Bracknell Forest Council would not be able to do what it's doing without all of them at all levels. And I think as well, should thank the senior officer team, the chief exec, and all of that team as well, who day in, day out, 24/7, are doing their best to do everything they can to help keep residents of Bracknell Forest as safe as they can. And, with no immediate end in sight to this, I just think, it's great to pay tribute to their extraordinary commitment and dedication. And that we hope that as next year unwinds, that things will get a little bit easier when they can. But in the meantime, just put on my record the thanks, because the performance data we've been discussing and we've seen before us would not happen if it wasn't for all of their commitment.
Thank you very much, Councillor Dr. Barnard. Councillor Birch, the seconder.
Thank you. I think it's a good report. It's from a good council that is delivering good services to the good people of Bracknell Forest. Let's keep it up, because in these amazing times, we continue to deliver for the people of Bracknell Forest.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Well, there's no need to sum up really, because I think individual members of the executive have spoken eloquently about many of the facets of what the council does, and I'm conscious that we're doing it in very difficult times, and we're only doing it because of our wonderful staff, our partners, and of course, let's not forget the public themselves, who are rallying round. The figure of 1,800 volunteers is absolutely humbling. So thank you, everybody. And I will take assent of our acceptance of that report, unless anybody indicates otherwise, and nobody has. So that is carried unanimously. And with that, that concludes the business to be transacted today. And I would like to thank you all very much indeed for your time and your cooperation. Thank you, everybody. And I wish you all, if I don't speak to you between now and Christmas, a restful Christmas, such as it may be. And let us look forward to the new year and let it be throw fewer challenges at us than 2020 did. Thank you very much indeed.
Meeting.